On to this edition of the Field of 68's Off the Carousel series, new Washington head coach, Danny Sprinkle. Danny, I think this is the third time now that we've had you on one of these series where we interview the new Division I head coaches. The good news is this year you only had to go out and get, 11 new guys instead of having to get 13 new guys last year at Utah State. So does it feel like you have a lot of continuity on this roster comparatively?
No, exactly. It was still a hard spring. But the crazy thing is I've probably been on with you guys 3 times in 15 months and I've been at 3 different schools. That's the problem. So, but no, like it's going to be very similar to last year. Putting this team together, with, probably 80% of our players being brand new and just trying to get them to fit together, but I'm not the only coach that has to deal with that. It's pretty much everybody in the country nowadays. The rosters are just flipping. And so, you have to be able to manage that, and you got to be able to manage expectations and especially from the student athlete side of view.
Hey, Sprink, what has this ride and this climb been like for you? Because again, you and I first met, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago to prep school. You were a Big West assistant coach, I think, back then. Yeah. A couple of years ago, you're the head coach at Montana State. You're excited to get your first opportunity to be a Division I head coach. You go to Utah State last year, you think you're going to be there for a while. Let's be honest. You don't think you're one and done in Logan. And now you're at Washington, your dad's alma mater, a great job in a new league. What has this whole thing been like?
Yeah, it's been it's been exhausting, especially the last 15 months. But it's been it's a special opportunity, I never would have fathomed this, I was planning on staying at Montana State forever, and then opportunities arise and then at Utah State, there was no way I would ever told you I'd be there for a year, not even 11 months. And, and I love both places. I still do. But the opportunity to, compete in a Power 5 conference and at the University of Washington, just a school that I've always kind of, admired because my dad playing football here, and it's been one of those schools I always rooted for. And being a West Coast kid, that's, it was an opportunity I just couldn't pass up.
If I would have told you it was just 5 years ago, you were an assistant at Cal State Fullerton, right? If I would have told you in 5 years you're going to be a head coach at a Big Ten program, and that Big Ten program would be Washington, would you believe anything that I would have told you?
No. First off, I'd have never believed I'd be a Big Ten head coach in 5 years. Number two, I never would have thought Washington would be in the Big Ten. But that's life. And like I said, 5 years ago, I'm an assistant for Dedrick Taylor at Cal State Fullerton, living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Brea, California. Wow. That's literally 5 years ago. And so it, you just got to make the most of the opportunities you're given and hopefully you get some breaks along the way, which I have.
So I joked with you when I saw you in Indy a few weeks ago at EYBL. I said, all right, now you're at Washington. Now, when I come out there, we can go out and grab a beer after a game. What was it like, though? Like, Utah State was a little bit of a culture shock for you. You're a single guy. You're out there. It's all ball. That's all it is, frankly, because, again, there aren't many other even for the players, there aren't many distractions at Utah State. Now you're in Seattle, where, again, it's a little bit different, isn't it?
It is. There's obviously a lot more restaurants and, just, stuff to do. But it's what makes Logan special too, though. And it's what makes it such a great basketball job at Utah State is the people care so much at Utah State in Logan. And, that's why it's sold out every game in the Spectrum. It's one of the top venues in the entire country to play in. You came out this year and, you saw how special it is. And so, I loved my time in Logan. Obviously I love my time in Seattle too. And been eating some pretty good seafood, some steakhouses and things like that. But, everywhere's got their special niche and Logan and Seattle both have it. And so did Bozeman. Bozeman's an awesome place too.
Bozeman's a party. They're all three different, right? Bozeman, more of a party school, college town.
Great college town. Great.
Right.
Yes.
So you've been in 3 completely different spots now in the last 2 years.
Yeah. And I'll keep going back to all those spots too, because it's it's awesome. Obviously Bozeman's my alma mater. And so like I knew it was personal. Like it was but it's an awesome place to go to school. And obviously Coach Logie's done a tremendous job. Obviously they, won the tournament this year and went back to the NCAA tournament. I know that they're gonna have a great team coming back too. So, I know that place will be rocking. And I know, Coach Calhoun, look at some of the recruiting he's already done at Utah State and just getting to know him. Like, he's a killer. I love talking to him. And I'm rooting for him, and I know he's going to do a tremendous job in the Mountain West.
Hey, before Rob gets to his question, I don't want to get off the Montana State thing for a minute. You played there. You were a really good player. Give me your favorite story when you were a player, and I'm not talking on the court. I'm talking like off the court, partying at Montana State. Is there a great story to be told?
Oh, I don't know. I'd probably probably like after we won the championship my freshman year, because I didn't drink, and like I'd never even been out, like we couldn't get to the bar. We weren't 21 years old. But Nico Harrison, who's now the GM of the Dallas Mavericks, Quadre Lawless, like all the guys, Adam Leachman, Danny Sullivan, Scott Hatler, all the guys I played with, they got me and the other freshman, Nate Homestead, into the bar that night. And so it was like the first time we'd ever been to a bar. And, but it took beating Weber State and winning the championship. Back then it was 96. And so, that'd probably be the only bar story I really got. Actually, probably the one I can tell on here, but
yeah, I was going to say the best story to get about that is probably not one that you're going to get from
exactly.
Coach. You got to get one from somebody else.
You got to get to Bozeman though. I'm telling you.
I'm going to get a story from Nico. That's what I got to get. I got to get Nico to tell a good story about you. I'm not sure he can do it right now.
He's got a lot more than I do.
I was going to say that's probably the number one thing on his mind right now in this moment, right? Is figuring the best stories from Danny Sprinkle from.
You might want to wait a couple weeks before you get him on the podcast.
I want to talk about the roster building process that you went through here, because I joked about it, but you added 11, I think it's 10 now, new faces after adding 13 new faces last year at Utah State. How is that process different when you're doing it up a level for Washington in the Big Ten? And how is it the same? And is it just like how stressful has that been trying to rebuild everything while you're trying to relocate and get a new job and figure out where you're going to live and all of this other stuff?
Yeah. It's very stressful. I don't think people understand how hard it is, because there's so many emotions that you go through leaving your team, like leaving your house. Like a lot of my assistant, you're leaving families. Like there's so much, you're literally just dumping your life upside down, and you're just going to a place, and all of a sudden now we're in totally new offices, a totally different environment. First off, you have to meet all the donors. Like there's so many things you have to do that stretches your time. And then it's like, okay, oh, by the way, we got to sign 10 players in the next 50 days. And so, it is. And I think last spring was like, it was hard too, but I think, with the NIL piece and it was 5 times as crazy this year, and I don't know if the transfers, I don't know if there was more this year or less, but, it just seemed like this year, it was a lot different. You're dealing a lot more with, agents this year than you were last year. There's a lot of, different factors that, you had that went into it this spring. But it's hard, cause it's pressure at this level, it's pressure at any level, but when you're in the Big Ten and all of a sudden you're like, okay, now we have to go get 10 players to go compete with Coach Izzo, to go compete with Coach May and Coach Johnson at Minnesota, Coach Painter, so like finding players that are good enough to compete and win games in the Big Ten, that's what's hard. And, you're not going to go just roll over a bunch of diamonds in the roughs and go win at Michigan State, and so it, that was the challenge of getting guys that were, that had the character, the toughness, how we want to play and how we're going to coach them, that are talented enough to play at the Big Ten level.
Well, it's nice when one of the best players that's in the portal is a guy that's been with you for the last 3 years, right? That's always a little bit of a security blanket.
Yeah, no, that helped. And we're very fortunate to get him. To be honest, I didn't think we were going to get him. Like it came down to, probably 4 schools, and kind of at the end, there was really 3 kind of still standing. And, I was like, when he called me, I was kind of shocked. I told my staff, I was like, man, I don't know if we're going to get him.
Really?
Yeah, because I didn't know if he wanted to just try something new, you know, and some of these teams were closer to the East Coast where it's just a direct flight for his parents. You know, and so, you know, I mean, we're about as far west as you can possibly get other than Hawaii. And so, you know, there was a lot of factors, but I think, you know, he is a comfort kid too. You know, like he knows our style. He knows how we're going to coach him. He knows I'm going to challenge him. You know, and I think, you know, that was something that kind of helped.
Yeah, we fell in love with them last year. I know when we did our Zoom, Rob and I, early in the season
Yeah.
with Great Housemore, and then when I got a chance to meet him in person. And the one thing I'll say, like seeing him play in person, Danny, it surprised me how mobile and agile he was. Like I didn't think he'd be like that watching him on film and watching him on TV. But is he a guy that, like, how do you think it's going to translate and his role will change now, maybe going from Utah State to Washington?
Yeah, I think it'll translate because the one thing he does, like he's a 6'8", 250-pound guy that can bring the ball up the floor and break presses and throw lobs. You know, and there's not many guys that can do that. But he can also really score on the block. But I think what he's going to be able to show, he's really been working on his perimeter jump shot. You know, like he shot a couple at Utah State. You know, but like that's something he's really working on because he's going to need it at the next level too. And I think he'll surprise people of how, like, I mean, I've already noticed how much better he's gotten, but like now translating to a game, that's different. But, you know, he's a kid that's going to work. But the one thing that, you know, I love about him is like, he'll fight you, you know, like he's mean, he's stubborn, like he's nasty, you know, like the more physical the game gets, usually the better he is. And that's one thing that not every kid has that, you know, sometimes that moment or the physicality can frustrate them and take them out of their game. Like I love when people come at him because I'm like, okay, that's what he needed to wake him up.
Going.
And that's when he really gets going. And so he'll have to play the 4 at this level in the Big Ten. You know, like we're not going to be able to play him at the 5. Like we had to at times against Zach Edey and doesn't work. You know, like those guys are just a lot bigger.
Hey, nothing worked against Edey.
Yeah, nothing did. It wasn't only just great. So
that's right.
No, great point. But but he'll, it's going to be really hard for Forrest to guard him in the paint too. And I think we have some pretty good options at the 5. Frank Kepnang, who we just got to keep him healthy. He's, and it's too bad for Coach Hopkins because and I love Hopkins, but he only played 1 game in the last 2 years in conference. And he was kind of a game changer. So they'd have won a lot more games with Frank on the floor. So hopefully we can, get him back to 100% and keep him healthy during conference. Because I think him and Greg could really play well off each other.
How much of that last game against Purdue are you kind of using to model your roster build off of, right? Like how much have you coached against Big Ten teams before? Is that what your first experience going up against one of them?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's crazy. Like I played Purdue 3 times. When I was an assistant at Fullerton, we played them in the NCAA tournament when they had Isaac Haas and Carson Edwards and those guys. So Purdue, I think, is different than most Big Ten teams. Now they're all big. Don't get me wrong. And even Indiana now with Umar Ballo, like they're gigantic, but not everybody's 7'4" or 7'2", and so we're not just building to be like Purdue because they're the only program that can do that. So we're trying to just kind of, obviously get bigger, but still want to play the same way. But like their team was special, man. Purdue, like the way the pieces they had around him too, it fit him perfect.
All right, one more on great, and then we can kind of move on to something else. But you guys are kind of growing together, right? Going from Montana State to Utah State to Washington. You're kind of learning the ins and outs of stepping up a level in the sport at the same time. How is having a guy that knows what you want to run, that how to put him in the best situations to win? Like obviously he's been a great player for you for the last 3 years now. So how comforting is that? Has that made it easier for you to kind of go through this transition process?
Yeah, I think it definitely will. And I think like last year, him and Darius Brown, who had a tremendous year, like those two really helped once summer workouts began and once all the players got back on campus, because they're the ones hanging out with them in the apartments. They're the ones in the locker room and getting shots up late at night, and they could be like, oh no, this is what coach is trying to get across. Like, hey, coach is hard on you because this is what he's trying to get out of our team, and so they were kind of the de facto coaches in the summer when you can only spend 4 hours a week with these kids. And so, that was huge at Utah State, having both of them. Now, obviously only having, Great, but Great's pretty vocal too, and Great cares about his teammates. Like he's going to challenge his teammates but he's also going to bring them along too. And like the one thing with Great, he's like a point guard, like he knows what every single player is supposed to do, offensively and defensively on every single play. He knows what's supposed to happen. Kind of like a quarterback, in a way. And that's kind of what makes Great special. Like he's got a great feel for the game. Not only can he do it physically, but like he thinks the game too.
Whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross-country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of the Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system.
All right. So my favorite hire of the offseason was Tony Bland.
Yep.
When you hired Tony Bland, honestly, I couldn't be more happier for anybody. And obviously, for people that don't know, he had a 3-year show cause. He was part of the FBI probe with a bunch of other assistants that got fired and I think got screwed. You hired Tony Bland, and I hope that opens the door for Book Richardson and Lamont Evans and some of those other guys to get hired. What went into that decision? Not an easy one. I mean, you're a brand new head coach at Washington. Obviously, Tony's a West Coast guy as well. You've known him, but what went into that decision?
Yeah, I just doing what's right. Like you said, like it wasn't a hard decision, honestly, because I know Tony. I know what type of person he is. I know how much he helps kids. I know how passionate he is about coaching. And like, I know what happened. We all know what happened. I mean, Book, Lamont, like they got screwed. And it's sad that those two are still not in the game. I mean, we talk to, Book all the time too. I don't know Lamont that well, but obviously I've heard, great things, but like those guys deserve to be, coaching, like, and there's a lot of people, that are coaching that, have done a lot worse than those guys are doing. And so, it was important for me to, to help Tony out, because if people don't know what he went through to get back into the college game, like he basically went back to the ground up and built himself back up. He got in the AAU ranks. He was the head coach at a high school, like, I mean, he was on the ground level and literally just what Tony does. He just worked his way up with relationships, and he did it the right way. And I mean, I was ecstatic that I was able to bring him on, because, I know there's probably a lot of other head coaches that wish they would have, and there's probably a lot that probably tried to. But I think our relationship goes back pretty far, and I think it was just a great place. Seattle and Washington was a great place for him to get a fresh start.
He's obviously a Southern California guy. You're a California guy. You're playing or you're coaching at a school that's known for being a West Coast school, but you are now playing in the Big Ten. And I'm just curious, does that impact the way that you're able to, the people that you can kind of recruit, like the locations you can kind of recruit, or has this kind of become a situation where it is, it's wherever is the right fit, wherever you can get the right kind of NIL package? Like, how much has I guess the recruiting base changed for you when you're at Washington now?
Yeah, I think it's all over the world now, especially just going into the Big Ten, like it's not, and kids, they don't care anymore. Like they could grow up right next to UCLA and they'll go to Rutgers. Like if they're getting paid more or they have a better deal, that's where they're going. And so like location doesn't really matter anymore. And now, like kids that, their parents are able to fly out and watch all the games. And so, I don't think location, so much matters anymore. And now, like with the Pac-12, like parents knew, okay, well, it was all West Coast. They could go. It was easier to travel to a lot of the, the Pac-12 games in conference. Where now you're going literally coast to coast. And so I don't think, it matters as much. But I think our recruiting base, our touch has to go farther. Like we might have to get kids from Florida. We might have to get kids from DC, or Indiana that are used to Big Ten basketball because they know that's where we're going to be playing a lot of our games on, in that Midwest and East Coast.
All right. So your dad, again, was a really good, from what I'm told, a really good defensive back at Washington in the 60s. I met him and your mom when I was out there. Yeah. All right. So were you just too soft to play football or what? What was the deal?
I played up until I got hurt. I hurt my knee my junior year in state track. And so they didn't know what was going on with it. So I wasn't able to do any of the AAU stuff for in the summer. Now back then, all they had was the BCI, I think it was called, like in Arizona or something. And then I wasn't able to play football my senior year, but like my first love was always basketball, and it was always, what I was better at. And so, I got recruited a little bit for football, but not like I was in basketball.
What position were you?
I played receiver.
So, hey,
I should have played quarterback.
So are you now on the list of most eligible bachelors in Seattle? Where do you think you rank right now? Are you top 10 yet?
I don't even know. I haven't even had a girl look at me since I got here. We've been too busy. I've just been staring at these four walls other than going out on recruiting visits.
So true or false that mom probably moved you out of your place in Logan, helped clean it, move you, all that.
Yeah. My mom and my Aunt Marlene, they went down to Logan and literally they had the whole place packed up, but they're workers, man. They love doing that. Like if they had a day off, that's what they'd want to go do. That's just how they grew. They love it.
Even with your wait. Like my guess is your place was probably not neat. Like, I don't know if it was back when you were a college kid. Hopefully it was better than that. But what did your mom come back and your aunt come back saying about how disgusting, or maybe it was neat? I don't know. Maybe it was neat.
No, like I keep it pretty clean. Because it was only me. So I kept it pretty clean. And, but I did notice when I got back, because I had my bedroom and two other bedrooms, because I always had friends or family coming down staying for the games. All my beds were gone. They just gave them away. The kitchen table, chairs, bar stool, they're all gone. And so I didn't have to worry about packing those up because they basically sold them on Facebook Marketplace. And so they
pocketed the money.
Yeah, I was going to say,
pocketed the money.
They definitely did not give those away. That was their payment for helping you pack everything up, but they just sold your stuff.
No question. But man, they had, boxed up tape. They're like professional movers. Thank God for it.
Hey, they've done it a few times for you.
No, exactly. Right? I'll tell you what. Yeah. And it gave them a little break from from my dad and my aunt's husband, and they got a little 4-day break away from them, so I didn't have to deal with them.
No, your parents are awesome, man.
Yep.
Met them out there, and they're fun. They're a good group, and I'm sure they're happy to. Your dad's got to be really proud, though. I mean, you think about it. You go to school somewhere like that at Washington, the pride that he had for his school, and now to watch his kid again take a kind of a crazy path to get there, and never thinking that you probably get there, and now you're the head coach at UW. Like, got to be really cool for him.
No, it is. It's awesome. You know, and I don't even, and it won't hit me or him until probably our first game, you know, like, and he'll come out to some football games and he'll be staying out here, but like, it's like once that first game and probably even that first conference game, like that's when it'll probably hit us.
Are there pictures of you walking around wearing UW gear from when you were like 8 or 9 years old?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like the jerseys. Oh yeah. I had all of it. Oh yeah. My sisters, like, we all had Husky stuff.
All right. Last thing I got for you is you have a bunch of cross-country flights coming up for conference games, right? You're going to be flying to Indiana. You're going to be flying to New Jersey. You're going to be flying all over the place. What are the shows that you're going to be binging, or is that just going to be strictly a film session?
Like I'm so boring. That's all I do. Like I just watch film. I wish I could watch, like, even some of my sisters, they'll be like, man, you got to see this new show on Netflix. And I'm like, man, I don't even have Netflix. Like, I don't need, like, if I do get 2 hours off, the last thing I want to do is watch anything. I just want to like go sit on my couch and not do anything.
Hey, so everybody gives me crap because we're in a group chat, a bunch of younger, Doster took himself out of this equation. He's too old. A group of younger college basketball media guys. And what I said all along was, you have more shit to you than people realize. Can you explain that to people? Because I don't know how to describe that to people, but here's what I will say. If you're that close to Dana and David Pump, which I know you are, you have to have a lot of shit to you, Spring.
You do. You do. No, I think I'm, and I it's crazy. I think I'm, honestly, like, I have 2 different personalities. I really do. Like, and I don't even know what it would be, like what doctor would say, whatever disease it is. I don't know. But like, I really feel like I'm a normal person. Like, there's times where I walk in, I'm like, man, I'm actually like the head coach at Utah State or head coach at Washington or Montana. Like, I never feel like that. And I never perceive myself to be like that. But then it's like, I'll watch games and I'll see how I'm acting on the court and I'll be like, damn, like, the hell's wrong with me? You know, but it's
you
like,
could be an MFer, right? You would acknowledge that to some degree. You've got a lot of old school in you, but the ability to kind of put your arm around kids and connect with them now.
Yeah. You know, like even in practice and games, like, it's like once the competitive side comes out, like, I'm different, you know, like I'm not the type when we're just hanging out on this Zoom, you know, but I can also, like I said, get a kid in here on the couch and like give him some love, and, you know, and it's totally different when we're not in between those lines. But, you know, I think, you know, when I'm in between those lines, like I definitely have an edge.
Was that you as a player too?
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
You were like no nonsense as a player?
I don't even know about no nonsense, but like, you know, like we played with some swag, like Nico and those guys. Like, if you didn't have it, you couldn't get on the court. And
hey, give me the Nico, give me the full breakdown, the scouting report on Dallas Mavs genius GM Nico Harrison.
I will tell you, he was probably, and I had to like play against him in practice. He was probably the best defensive player, you know, one of the best I ever had to go up against. You know, I mean, you see, he's 6'5". Now, back then he was really skinny and like athletic. You know, not that he's like big right now, but he was really skinny and long. But he was a tremendous defensive player. Like, had instincts, really athletic. He could block shots from behind. You couldn't get past him. You know, and that's kind of where he made his mark. But, you know, he was a slasher, man. Like, he had some big time dunks. You know, even on social media, you know, even on the Montana State stuff, like, they're congratulating him. But, you know, a lot of them are just like pictures of him dunking on guys.
Really?
So he was a tremendous athlete. And I know he still tries to get in the gym and play like old man game. I don't know what he's trying to do, but No, he was a heck of a player. I mean, he was a 3-time first team all Big Sky player.
Who's
Played
the
over
comp?
a while.
Who's the best NBA comp to Nico Harrison? Who is it?
Oh, he would probably be a 3-and-D guy, but he wasn't like at the time in college. It wasn't like he was just a knockdown shooter. Like he could make them. I'm trying to think who's in that 6'5" mold.
Is he like Derek Jones, like that type?
A
On
little
his
bit.
team?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably. Derek Jones might be 6'8", 6'9", but yeah, very,
he's
very
long.
similar to that. Great
Right.
call. In
Okay.
fact, that's probably why he brought him onto the Mavs.
Yeah, good pickup. He's
Exactly.
gonna, he'll be in charge of having to deal with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Probably not the easiest.
No, I saw he just got a contract extension today, so I was texting with him, congratulating him on that. But I mean, if you look at what he did with some of those midseason trades,
Oof.
I mean, and getting Kyrie, I mean, that completely changed the trajectory of that franchise.
Yeah, Jeff is probably Kyrie Irving's biggest fan. His
number
one fan.
Not,
All right,
not particularly.
Last thing I got for you, Sprink. We're gonna do a negotiation right here. We want to field a 68 NIL deal with Washington. I got to know, how much good pub do we have to give you guys to be able to get all the tickets that we need for the pump party this year at the Final Four in San Antonio?
I'll tell you what, the pump party, that might be one of the hottest tickets. That might be hotter than the Final Four ticket, but I for sure got you two taken care of, and I could probably get you guys +1. I could probably hook that up.
+1. I got +7 from Dana and David last year. You got way more juice than me with them.
We'll sneak you in the back door.
There we go.
Right. Sprink, appreciate it, man. Great having you on.
You guys too,
Carousel. Next year, listen, we do not want to do this with you again next year. All right.
I'm not going nowhere.
Okay. Promise.
Hey, I'm not going anywhere.
There you have
and
it.
I hopefully don't have to sign 10, 11 players either.
That would be nice. That would be nice. All right. Danny Sprinkle, head coach, UW.